Last year, Samsung created another new market niche, outing the first handset equipped with a 10x optical zoom, the aptly named Galaxy S4 Zoom. It had a 60-megapixel sensor, protruding lens, and a bulky body, making it more of a camera with phone functions you'd take on vacation rather than something suitable for the everyday grind. This year, Samsung doubled down on the new market niche it created by outing this phone here. This is Daniel from PhoneArena presenting the Galaxy K Zoom, whose naming scheme breaks away from riding on the flagship's coattails this time. The second edition is better equipped in the specs department, both on the phone and on the camera side. It now sports a 20-megapixel sensor, larger screen, and better processor. Does the K Zoom stand a better chance of becoming something else than a niche device for camera enthusiasts though? Let's find out. The K Zoom is taller and wider than its predecessor, making it less suitable to operate with one hand. The huge lens area on the back sticks out a bit more and gets in the way while operating the phone, but one can quickly get used to that. Due to the protruding lens part, the phone also looks funky when placed on a table, with the upper part propped by the camera and the phone rocking left to right when you tap on the screen. At 7 ounces of weight, you always notice that the K Zoom in your pocket or in your hand, but still the heft and dimensions are manageable considering that you carry a 10x optical zoom device with you at all times. The thing weighs as much as some of those 6-inchers that are flooding the market lately, so if you're willing to put up with that lack of comfort, you won't have trouble gobbling up the K Zoom too. Samsung has opted for the perforated look that first appeared with the Galaxy S5 and uses the same soft touch material for the back. The phone hands feels solid in the hand, providing a good grip, and the weight distribution doesn't lean on the lens part, so you don't need to carefully balance it when operating the screen with one hand. The dimpled battery cover is easily removable, revealing a replaceable unit underneath it. This might come in handy for those photogs that the K Zoom is aimed at, since they can carry a spare juicer or two with them at all times when shooting in the boondocks. Samsung has outed the K Zoom with its signature physical home key below the display, which flaunts a good tactile feedback, and the same goes for the volume rocker, lock key, and the camera shutter button on the right hand side. The left is occupied solely by the microSD slot, which lets you extend the internal storage with up to 64GB card. Samsung opted for a larger display diagonal compared to the 4.3-inch S4 Zoom. The K Zoom sports a 4.8-inch HD Super AMOLED display, and typical for an AMOLED panel, the colors are very inaccurate, not only oversaturated but also tone incorrect. The color temperature is way on the cold side, so what should be a white background, for instance, is actually light blue. Thus, if you can't trust the K Zoom's display accuracy if you go shoe shopping online or want to preview your photos on the phone itself. Moreover, the panel's peak brightness is pretty low, even compared to other Super AMOLEDs from Samsung. Outdoors, the screen doesn't reflect much light, so you can tell what's on the display, though if the sun shines directly on it, you'll be in trouble. Viewing angles are pretty good, as the screen keeps its deep blacks from an angle, but the color inaccuracies deepen even further with the slightest tilt. About the only good thing that can be said about the quality of the K Zoom's display is its low minimum brightness of 4 nits, so it won't burn your eyebrows if you have to read something on it in the dark. There aren't any surprises in Samsung's latest Touchwiz Interface, layered on top of Android 4.4 KitKat on the K Zoom. It's the same you'd find on the Galaxy S5, for instance, with the respective Samsung app set and the stock widgets, like the new Toolbox floating app set, the Ultra Power Saving mode, or the magazine news aggregator. The traditionally rich Touchwiz functionality is here as well. You can easily access notifications, connectivity switches, and a brightness slider from the pull-down status bar. There's no multi-window mode here, the one that splits the screen in two and enables you to run 2 separate apps at the same time. On this 4.8-inch display, however, without that you'll have much patience for this kind of multitasking anyway. The only new app that tips this is a more special kind of phone is ProSuggest. It lists downloadable camera extensions like shooting modes, color effects, and artwork examples, which get added to the camera interface upon installation. Powered by Samsung's new mid-range Exynos 5 Hexa processor, the Galaxy K Zoom interface seems very fluid with no hiccups along the way. This chip sports 2 1.7 GHz Cortex-A15 cores and 4 1.3 GHz low-power A7s for the mundane tasks, paired with a Mali T624 GPU. This processor and graphics combo might not be the newest Snapdragons in a benchmarking fight, but we'd have to say it makes the K Zoom household run smooth and without quarrels. Samsung placed the adequate 2GB of RAM in the handset, which means you won't find the phone struggling for memory when many apps are running at once. There are 8GB of internal memory in the K Zoom, of which only about 4 are user available though, and a microSD slot on the left side for up to 64GB storage expansion. We've got no complaints about Samsung's stock Touchwiz Browser, as it renders the pages very quickly and panning around as well as zooming or scrolling are fast and without major interruptions. The K-Zoom can offer 4G LTE radio and 42 megabits per second HSP plus download speeds, depending on the region and the carrier it's offered at. The other wireless options are standard set, while wired connectivity is offered through the MHL port at the bottom. Apart from the regular Touchwiz Gallery, which offers split screen view, Samsung also offers the so-called S Studio, which adds extra editing options for your pictures and videos, including the ability to make artsy collages and slideshows on the phone itself. The music player interface with its blocky elements is familiar from the Galaxy S5. The UI might be unimpressive, but it offers all the basics like song categorization, as well as an abundance of equalizer presets and sound modes to choose from. The loudspeaker is on the average side in terms of quality, as the sound lacks range, but it's quite punchy in terms of strength. We also get a stock video player that runs most popular formats like MPEG-4, MKV and XVD, but not DivX, without a hitch and up to 1080p resolutions. Its interface is brimming with options such as the ability to add subtitles, captions, loop and even edit the videos. The 20 megapixel camera sensor in the Galaxy K-Zoom has powerful spec sheet to back it up. The sensor is large, we get 10 times optical zoom, xenon flash, LED focus assist light and image stabilization. The aperture is subpar though compared to most flagships. Zooming is done with the volume rocker or an on-screen slider, while the instant camera mode lets you enter directly the camera up from a lock screen by pressing the shutter key and the volume rocker at the same time. You have to briefly hold the volume key up and the shutter button together, then upon release the camera lens will pop out and you will be ready to shoot in about 2 or 3 seconds. The phone locks focus for less than a second, even indoors, and recording the shot ready for the next shutter press takes about a second or so. There's an abundance of shooting modes and color effects that goes way beyond the typical smartphone camera options, even on feature-rich ones. For tricky dynamic scenarios, the K-Zoom has a unique feature allowing you to place the focus on the subject you want, but move the exposure measurements to be taken from another part of the scene. The K-Zoom has a full manual mode. It lets you change the shutter speed, the aperture and the ISO. For the aperture you can only choose one of 2 options, however: open f3.1 and close f9, no steps in between. This greatly limits the idea of a manual mode when you combine it with a lack of shutter speed priority mode, plus this cumbersome interface here. We can't imagine somebody using this mode often. Pictures taken with the automatic mode turn out with an overall natural, sometimes slightly bland color representation compared to reality, but not to an unpleasant extent. The K-Zoom's white balance measurements are very credible in most situations, except for the HDR regime, which tends to produce photos with warm yellowish overcast. Detail is plenty, as can be expected, and noise is kept in the normal range. We must point out, however, that when compared to a normal phone like the S5, the K-Zoom isn't at all superior. Indoors, the Galaxy K-Zoom also performs pretty good, but not excellent. All of our test photos turned out good, but some had not too accurate colors and some were rather underexposed. Noise creeps up indoors, but not outside the expected range. In the studio setup, the xenon flash fired in all 4 photos, but its color fidelity is not that good. The Galaxy K-Zoom doesn't record 4K resolution video, which is a bummer, considering that a lot of flagship handsets now do. It, however, can record extremely fluid 1080p video with 60 frames per second, in addition to the usual 30 frames per second count. The footage sports a very natural color representation and doesn't skip frames or feature unusual artifacts. Exposure adjustments while panning around are very quick, and so is the continuous autofocus. Having both a 10 times optical zoom lens and optical image stabilization makes the K-Zoom one of the best phones for recording video, as the footage remains steady when panning around and you can zoom into crazy detail from afar without sacrificing quality. There's a silent zoom option too, where the lens motor noise gets weeded out if you zoom in while recording, and the zooming action itself is very smooth. One chief concern with a phone that carries 10 times optical zoom lens is a potentially bulky chassis, and unfortunately the Galaxy K-Zoom is not an exception here. It is still as butch and hefty as its predecessor, yet the dimensions are bearable, especially if you're used to carrying large handsets. With that caveat aside, knowing that you have 10 times optical zoom in your pocket at all times is a very strong incentive for photo enthusiasts to get the handset. Discounting the lack of 4K abilities, the Galaxy K-Zoom can also be considered one of the best phones for video recording too, as the optical image stabilization and 60 frames per second footage stack on top of the optical zoom lens. If you have no need for the zoom though, the difference in picture quality with the current Android flagships doesn't warrant the purchase of the K-Zoom. This fact, together with the phone's bulk, make it more of a niche device, suitable for photos or for a second phone that you would use when on vacation, for example, rather than for a daily driver. This was Daniel from PhoneArena with a video review of the Samsung Galaxy K-Zoom. For more information about this and other handsets, you can visit us at phonearena.com. Thanks for watching.